Hello.
Hi, Mario. We finished Kli Shemlacto Leheter, so we're going to start in.
I think we're Kli Shemlacto Leheter. We're in 257. 257. Yes, see, I know where we are. Even though we're going to get that.
Yes, we did the machshava on that one. Mario, we're on 257.
Mhm.
You know, it's interesting. They are noite leheter. If you notice throughout the thing, it just seems lenient that if you moved it already, you could continue moving it, and it seems like it's probably because it's rabbinic. The whole thing of Mukzeh is rabbinic. Oh, thank you. To me, it seems they're less machmir so far.
Well, couldn't do that. Yeah, no, you don't have one there. Yep. I'll let you know. Everybody's honest. It was good. Tastes coming.
Who is it? Yaakov?
Yaakov Yellen and his wife and Saul are here.
Oh, okay.
Harold is out of town. Harold's at a wedding. At Jerry Einhorn, Rabbi Einhorn's wedding, his son. So I think Harold's out of town.
You know what? It's Beverly Wood Bakery. Schwartz Moshe bought the patent for Beverly Wood Bakery.
It was a non-Jewish bakery, so he brought all the recipes.
This is amazing.
And so, isn't it really good?
They have a
But I go
really
volunteer to
good
get it.
chocolate ring.
Also, but the cinnamon's really good, right? It's really good.
Just for this was worth coming out. We got a whole good shit.
Okay. So in the previous year, we began certain laws of Mukzeh, the prohibition against moving certain items on Shabbos. We covered the category of Mukzeh known as Kli Shemlacto Leheter, like a hammer, a Kli that's used for something that's prohibited on Shabbos, a power saw, a utensil used predominantly for tests that are prohibited on Shabbos. In this year, we will first discuss the restriction on moving other utensils on Shabbos, even those which are predominantly used for permitted purposes. And then they're going to move on to other categories of Mukzeh, Machmas Chisaron, Kiss, etc. So we'll do a recap of the Gemara Masechta Shabbos that appeared in the previous year, which quotes a Baraisa stating that although in the times of Nehemiah, who we've been dealing with a little bit in our Ezra year, moving most utensils was prohibited, this was subsequently relaxed in various stages. Rava concluded that the sages permitted moving a Kli Shemlacto Leheter even if one's purpose is merely to protect the utensil by moving it out of the sun. Remember, a Kli Shemlacto Leheter, you may not do that. Unless, for example, you picked it up inadvertently and you started moving it. So there was one sheet that said you can then move it into the shade. But lechatchila, we don't. But a Kli Shemlacto Leheter, you could perhaps move directly. Torah Rabbanan. Berishona, which means in the time of Nehemiah, hayoimim shloisha kelim niton b'Shabbos. There were really only three types of kelim, or three distinct kelim that could be moved. Mikzor shel dvela, this was a special kind of fork. They used to have like a fig cake, pressed figs. There was some utensil that I guess was used to cut it. Vizua malistrin shel kedera. So they had some kind of combined fork and spoon that was used to scrape the insides of a pot. V'sakin ketana shel gabi shulchan. And a knife, a small knife that was on the table, I guess used for cutting. Those were permitted to use. Hitiru. But then hitiru, v'chazer hitiru, v'chazer hitiru. In future generations, as they saw that the that the Jewish people were not lax in their observance of Shabbos, that they were vigilant. They relaxed the restriction and they permitted other types of kelim. Amar Hitiru davar Shemlacto Leheter. Rava says one of the things they permitted was a kli that is used for permitted things on Shabbos, like a fork, a knife, a spoon. That certainly comes to mind. Bein l'tzarach gufo, bein l'tzarach makom. Whether you're going to use that kli itself, or whether you need the place for where that kli is resting. They went even beyond that, because using something legufo, meaning for its own use or for its place, is a much stronger reason than perhaps protecting your financial loss by moving a kli out of the sun into the shade. That's a more choldika, more weekday kind of activity, but even that was eventually permitted. And so ruled the Rambam in Hilchos Shabbos, called Kli Shemlacto Leheter, a kli whose normal function is for a permitted purpose, bein shel eitz, whether it's wood, or shel cheres, or pottery, or shel even or stone, or shel matechas, so metal. So the material that the kli is made of is not a driving factor here. Mutter l'taltalo b'Shabbos. You can move it on Shabbos. Bein bishvil atzmo shel kli. You need the kli itself. Bein l'tzorach makom, bein l'tzorach kli. The Magid Mishnah, one of the commentators on the Rambam, infers that the Gemara and Rambam only permit moving a Kli Shemlacto Leheter for some purpose, even if the purpose is merely to protect the utensil. He then, I guess, was medayek that moving a utensil for no purpose whatsoever is prohibited. V'dasha midivrei Rabbeinu, from the words of the Rambam, near just to sort of move a kli for no purpose whatsoever is something that l'chora you wouldn't be able to do. Afarash bezal, kein hela perakira. The Rashba came up with the same conclusion. Don't move kelim around that you're not using. And it's correct, Sharei B'Gemara, Rava Bava Hitir, Rava came and noted that they were more lenient. He said that they eventually matir'd. When you move something from the sun into the shade, it's not because you need the kli at all. If the purpose of Rava was to, and there at least there's a purpose of protecting the kli, but it's not no purpose at all. If Rava's intent was to be matir for no purpose, he should have left that detail out. Implying that if there's no need at all, you are not allowed to move it. The Magid Mishnah agrees with that understanding. The Magid Mishnah states that there are poskim that are matir even to move a kli without any purpose at all. However, he says that they don't have a raya. The Ran, another Rishon, also quotes a view that prohibits moving any utensil for no purpose whatsoever. However, he adds that even according to this view, the prohibition applies only to utensils, not to food or to svarim. The Kli Shemlacto Leheter Shalol Tzarach Klal also tatalo, that moving a kli without any purpose, you're not supposed to do that. Kalim, that's with real, kalim, utensils. Aval b'sifrei HaKodesh, books, the oichlin, food, that would not be prohibited. Lefisha kalim shenesru mitchila, ein lanu lahatiran. Originally, in the times of Nehemiah, they prohibited kelim, and then we slowly permitted and permitted and permitted. And it's what the Chazal had permitted. We never saw that there was any kind of prohibition on books or food. Whoever wants to be machmir has to bring a proof. And the Shulchan Aruch so rules. Kli Shemlacto Leheter. A kli that is normally used for permitted purposes. Mutar l'taltalo, you can move it. Afilo eino elatzarcha kli. Even if it's only to protect the kli. Shema yishaver yiganev. You want to protect it from breaking. So you want to move it to a safer place. You don't want it stolen. So the Shulchan Aruch paskins of a shalol l'tzarch klal asur l'taltalo. So the primary position of the Shulchan Aruch is to move even a permitted kli for no purpose is prohibited. Kisvei kodesh v'oichlin, he says books, Jewish books, food. Mutar l'taltal nafi shelo tzarich klal.
What does it mean for no purpose? Why do you move anything for no purpose? What does that mean?
Maybe like you're being misasek, literally in general, you're gonna move a kli for a reason. It's on your table and you need room on the table, or it's taking up space somewhere and you want to move it. So it's hard to imagine. It's just somebody is playing around, huh? To play with it.
Again, hard to imagine.
Tosfos writes that even at the time of Nehemiah, it was permitted to move vessels used to hold food, right? Because one of them was this fork for the figs. Lo chashav elakem delav nekibul. The kelim that were prohibited initially were ones that have nothing to do with food. They have a receptacle. This is like base kibul, right? The hapshita, the koisus, the ka'arus, the tzrichos, amatatla. They certainly were moving cups and plates and silverware. That was never prohibited. Accordingly, the Shulchan Aruch writes that one may move these vessels even for no purpose whatsoever, because it never was prohibited. So it never fell into a prohibition, which was then eventually permitted. Right? Cups, bowls, plates, knives. This little knife. Nearly it was never prohibited. However, the Magid Mishnah Shulchan Aruch quoted above in sources 3 and 5 did not make any distinction between different Kli Shemlacto Leheter, and they would appear to prohibit moving even cups, bowls, and plates for no purpose whatsoever. The Mishnah Berurah at least brings the machlokas. Aval shelo l'tzarich klal hainu, im kol alom lo yitzarchenu klal. He doesn't need this kli at any time during the day. Aval im yitzarch lo ba'oso yom. But he might need it later on. So that's permitted. I mean, you're moving it in a certain place. Right now you don't need it, but you think you need it later on and you want to know where it is. So that's a permitted movement.
I would say that's considered a purpose. That's not no purpose. That's a purpose.
That's why the Mishnah Berurah allows it. That's why he allows it. Right now, right? Kol hayom lo yitzarchenu. But if later on, he gives you that. What about cups and plates and these things? He understands that it seems like maybe the Magid Mishnah Shulchan Aruch were machmir there. The tadirin b'shat tashmish. These are used all the time. He says lo chal alay Hilchos Mukzeh Klal. He goes along this tzad that it was never prohibited in the first. U'ka'oichlin v'kitzvei kodesh dami, and they're treated as food or books. He says yesh machvin apil mekelu elu. He brings it as a yesh. that means the Magid Mishnah and the Shulchan Aruch, but it seems that the Mishnah Berurah is poskening leniently from his language. However, Rav Ovadia Yosef, no surprise, he always will follow the Shulchan Aruch, right? Rules stringently in accordance with the implication of Shulchan Aruch, that one may not move any utensil on Shabbos for no purpose whatsoever. A cup is certainly a kli that is used for a permitted thing to do. You're allowed to eat and drink on Shabbos, right? Or you have a knife that you're going to use to cut with lechem or basar. Listen, you're about to cut the challah, you're allowed to pick up your challah knife and cut it. There's no problem with that. You need its place. You want to put the kli away somewhere to protect it so it won't get stolen. I agree with Yaakov. Pretty hard to come up with what are we talking about? What kind of movement of a kli for no purpose whatsoever? Like what comes to mind to me is like a ball. Now we're not saying yet that a ball is a kli, okay? And we're not saying yet whether the ball is a Kli Shemlacto Leheter. I mean, you play ball usually not on Shabbos. You play ball during the week. Okay, maybe it's a Kli Shemlacto Leheter, but I don't know. But like, is playing a ball considered no purpose? Right. So moving something. Now, how about a game? You're playing dominoes, or you're playing mahjong. Okay, so those are kalim. Okay, we'll have to deal with that. Our kid, they played Monopoly or something like that.
There's a purpose. You're playing. Not like a Jewish purpose.
It's not a
A
prohibition.
Jewish
Hang on, it's not a prohibition. It's not prohibited. We'll have to see.
purpose, socialization.
Huh? Okay, but these are things we have to keep in mind when we talk about, like, you have no purpose doing it. Rav Chaim rules stringently in this regard. But he writes that clothes and jewelry are equivalent to svarim and may be moved even for no purpose. Okay, you're also not going to be moving clothes that often for no purpose. I mean, you take clothes because you're going to put it on, or you put it back.
Move jewelry though.
Huh?
You don't move jewelry for no purpose.
And you don't move, but he's saying those could be moved for no purpose if they were moved. It's because it's something that is so common that there was never an isser in the first place. It's similar to books. Shmir Shabbos Hilchos permits moving clothes and jewelry for no purpose based on Chaim. Okay. Listen, we're building. So we've done Mukzeh Machmas, a Kli Shemlacto Leheter. We've done Kli Shemlacto Leheter. What about Mukzeh Machmas Chisor and Kiss? We'll have to explain that. These are other categories of Mukzeh, and we're going to start with Mukzeh Machmas Chisor and Kiss. Mukzeh due to financial loss. Utensils that people take care not to move for purposes other than their designated purpose, usually due to these utensils being valuable. Those types of utensils may not be moved on Shabbos. I remember the Gemara talks about like a Mila knife that a moil would or a shoichetz knife, right? So they're very careful because it's expensive. They could break. So that is going to fall into that category. The Mishnah Gemara Masechta Shabbos gives examples of utensils people extra take care of. They take extra care of it, and therefore you can't move them on Shabbos. Mishnah Rabbi Yossi Omer Kol HaKelim Nitolim Chutz Min HaMeser HaGadol. That's a large saw, I assume, to cut down trees. V'yateit shel machresha, the blade of a plow, right? So I think they would remove, right? There's a piece of wood that fits into that metal part of the plow, and they probably separated them when they stored them. And then when you use the plow, you put them together. That part was very valuable, so you could not move that. It says in the Mishnah. Amr Rav Nachman, Hai uchla de katzri kiyaset shel machresha damya. The gardener, and they had some, I guess, like a hose or some kind of sprinkler that they use to water the ground. Or excuse me, it's a launderer. It's some kind of, I guess, a Kli used to wash clothes. So that's, you set it aside because it's valuable. Amr Abaya, Charba de Ushchupi, a shoemaker's knife, Sakina de Ashkafta, butcher's knife, Chatzina de Nagri, a carpenter's draw knife, Kiyosei Shemachri, these are also, so these are professional pieces of equipment that a professional will use. So that's the classic definition of a Kli Machmas, it's Mukzeh Machmas Chisonkiz. Elsewhere, the Gemara states that even Reb Shimon, now we're talking about Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, because Reb Shimon throughout Masechta Shabbos is Reb Shimon, the one who argues with Rabbi Yehuda, just because we just said like Boimer last week, we mentioned it after the 24,000 Talmidim that were killed, or excuse me, that died during this period. So Rabbi Akiva went down to the Darom, and he gave smicha to 5 new Talmidim. It was Reb Meir, Reb Shimon, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yehuda ben Eloi, and Rabbi Yosi. All of our Torah Shebal Peh from these five Tanoim. Think about how much Torah Shebal Peh we would have had if we had all 24,000. We just had from those 5. So that's why throughout Shabbos you have Machlokes, Reb Shimon, Rabbi Yehuda, Davar Shem Miskavin, Malachto Shem Tzich Lagufa. Literally dozens and dozens of Machlokes, Rabbi Yehuda, Reb Shimon throughout Masechta Shabbos and throughout Shas. So Reb Shimon, as we see, he's always the more lenient one against Rabbi Yehuda, right? Dover Shem Miskavein. You do a malacha and you have no kavana. Rabbi Yehuda says it's osir. According to Rabbi Shimon, it's permitted. Okay? And then we say, Moida Rabbi Shimon b'psik reisha. That even if something automatically happens 100% of the time, Rabbi Shimon will prohibit it there unless it's lo nichale. But it's an example of Rabbi Shimon is always more lenient. And here also, when it comes to Mukzeh, he's very lenient. He permits moving certain objects while others prohibit it. Here he agrees, but something that is Mukzeh, Machmas, Chisor, and Kiss, you can't move. Mukzeh, Machzor, and Kiss, Afil Rabbi Shimon Moide. This time called a Kelm, Yitom Shabbos Hilchos Mukzeh, and you see Rabbi Shimon doesn't argue. So Rabbi Shimon is lenient, is not lenient regarding that. Tosfos adds that one must not move this category of Mukzeh, even Letzorach Gufo. You want to use the Kli on Shabbos for a permitted purpose, but you're going to use, let's say it's a butcher's knife, okay? But it's very expensive. But you need to use it to cut something. You can't use it, even for that. Sakina dashkafta, even if you're going to use it as a knife, you can't move it. And the Shulchan Aruch rules accordingly. All kelim can be moved on Shabbos, right? For some reason, right? So far, we've seen, there's a lot of reasons why we move kelim. Now comes the Shulchan Aruch and tells us, you cannot move a Mukzeh Machmas Chisor Kiss. Kagon, Sachin Shel Shchita, right? A Shchita knife, or Shel Mila, a Moil's knife. The Izmil Shel Sforim, a soifer used a knife, I guess, to scrape off the ink, right? The Sakin Shel Soifrin. Oh, Izmil Shel Saporim is a barber's knife. The Sakin Shel Soifrin, the scribes, Shematagme Makulmusim, or they sharpen their pens. Kivin Shemakpidim Shel Lasos Behem Tash Mishacher. They're very careful with these implements. They don't use it for any other purposes. Even if for some reason you needed to use it, or you need its place, they cannot be moved. Says the Ramah, merchandise, kelim that are designated for merchandise. And you're careful with them. Now, what is the precise definition of the category of Mukzeh Machmas Chisor Kiss? The Rambam defines it as any utensil that one is careful to preserve its value. You're very careful that it's going to lose its value. You're going to use this Kli to sell as merchandise. V'kelim hayikarim b'yoser, or very expensive utensils. Shemakpid aleim shemayifsedu, and he's very concerned with them. They may get damaged. Also, that's how the Rambam defines it. And the Mishnah Berurah explains similarly. Kol ha-kelim rotzalomer afilu Kli Shemlacto Leheter nitla kol porim l'tzar gufo makomo. Right, a hammer, which is you're not allowed to hammer in a nail on Shabbos, so it's defined as a Kli Shemlacto Leheter. But if you need to use it to crack walnuts, you can use it, or you need the place. It's sitting on your Shabbos table. You're allowed to move it. But Chisor and Kiz, what's lomer shemachbos chashash hefsedu makbelem shalol tam umaktzor samidaite. He sets them away from his mind. So that's a severe type of muktzeh. See also Bir Alocha, who is of course the Chavetz Chaim as well, who writes that in other cases of muktzeh machbos Chisor and Kiz, mentioned the Gemara, one designates a special place for the item to ensure that it doesn't get ruined. See the Shar Tziyun cites the Beis Meir, who says the same thing. Many poskim, however, limit this application to a Kli Shemlacto Leheter. But for a Kli Shemlacto Leheter, if it does prohibited work, like a knife, a special place to keep the item is not a knife, like a shrita knife, which you're not allowed to shret on Shabbos. A special place to keep the item is not actually required to render it muktzeh machbos Chisor Kiz. So that's not a criteria to include it. It's got to have that. It's got to have a special hiding place or a special, place that you put it in. No, it's just an indication that the item is not used for other purposes, but no designated place is required to render it muktzeh machbos Chisor Kiz. And so says the Igros Moshe, Pischei Teshuvos. According to this, an expensive musical instrument or laptop computer could still be classified as a muktzeh machbos Chisor Kiz, even if they're not always stored in one designated location. Now, I don't know if a laptop, do we treat our laptop, we're throwing our laptop computer all over the place.
We keep it very protected.
Didn't we come across in a previous year, like, it was a muktzeh, it was like a toaster or something? And I said, that doesn't sound like it's very valuable. We had that in a previous year, we don't clean out the Easter. I think it was a toaster, I'm not sure.
A toaster is a Kli Shemlacto. I wouldn't say that a toaster is a Kli Shemlacto.
Yes, I think it was a toaster. I don't know if anyone remembers, but I actually asked them. That doesn't seem like it was some electric utensil, which didn't seem very valuable. But whoever I forget who it was said it was Asur Machmas Chisor Kiz, and it didn't seem very valuable. Okay.
So an expensive musical instrument I can understand. A laptop, okay.
Some laptops like $3,000-4,000.
Okay, so then you're gonna be very careful.
It's used for, maybe just for a specific purpose,
Okay.
nothing else.
Okay. Although the Rambam gives utensils set aside as merchandise as an example of muktzeh machbos Chisor Kiz, the Beis Yosef cites other sources that indicate that merchandise is not necessarily muktzeh on Shabbos. So he resolves this contradiction by explaining that classification of an object as muktzeh machbos Chisor Kiz is subjective, depending on whether or not the owner is careful to avoid damage to the object. When people have a warehouse or an area in their house where they have merchandise that they sell, and the Rambam said also l'taltalim, and you can't move them. That's if the owner is very careful about those objects. He doesn't want them to be lost or damaged. And just, not all merchandise is very expensive, but but the person doesn't plan on personal use of this item. He plans to sell it. So therefore, that criteria applies to kelim that are designated for merchandise. But if they're not that valuable, it's not really makbid. Afal Pishtei Muktzeh L'skor Mutter L'Tatlam. Here, the Beis Yosef commentary on the tour wants to say that you might be able to move such a thing. The Magen of our Mishnah Berurah also quote the distinction made by the Beis Yosef. Rav Yitzchak Yosef, Rav Avadia's son, formalizes the rule that classification of an object as Muktzeh Machmas Chesron Kis is subjective. Din Muktzeh Machmas Chesron Kis Toloi Bikpedosam Shalabaylik. It depends on how the owner views it. He's not careful about using it for another purpose. It's not muktzah for him. Even if other people might use such a kli for other purposes, for the guy who would use the item, it would not be considered muktzah machmas chisron kis.
So it's really not how valuable it is, because, you could have a set of dishes, or whatever, what if the expensive dishes for the Royal Boat?
China,
Yeah,
Limoges.
yeah, those are a fortune. I mean, they cost, a place sitting might cost as much as a laptop. But the owner clearly doesn't.
But he wants to use them.
Wants to use it, so it's not really how valuable they are specifically, is it set aside because it's a special.
So loli shtamish b'chayvet zel l'dvorim acherim.
There you go.
So you're not going to use your china. You're going
to hold up a door.
Yeah.
Or anything like that. But you can use it to eat.
Rav Yitzchak Yosef lists several examples of objects that are considered muktzah machmas chisron kis. Elu mixes form sheish ben din muktzah. He brings a list of things that would be considered this type of muktzah. Igeret avir. I sent Susie tons of when she was in Machon Gold. I would.
Aerogram.
So he says an aerogram. He says is muktzah. Buli dor lo muchtamim, unstamped postage stamps.
Wait, a passport, it's very, very,
Postcards, passports.
He says
very.
luyos dara rekos, postcards. Darkon, a passport. Matzlema, a camera. Nioros erech, security certificates, stock certificates. Sakin shel mila knife. Sakin shel shchita knife. Sakin shel soifrim, a soifer's knife that he uses to sharpen the quill. Shematakni bosakulnis. Pamutot yikarei erech, expensive candelabras. Checking. Klav shel soifer, parchment that a soifer is going to use to write his Sefer Torah. Taklitim, records. V'kayotzepo. The Shmira Shabbos Hilchos adds other similar examples, such as important business or government documents, bills of money, credit cards, bus cards. Some poskim consider credit cards or bus cards to be muktzah machmas gufo, since they have no use at all on Shabbos. Though it could be responded, these cards could be used as bookmarks.
So, I've got a question with regards to like a bus card. Okay. Now, that's something that's prepaid. Okay, and you want to take the subway from your house, let's say, someone in the hospital, it's much too far for you to walk. Now, a subway stops at every station. It doesn't stop for you at this particular station. It stops at every single station. And you get off at the one that you, as appropriate for you, where you want to go. So it's prepaid, and the mode of transportation is for everyone, not specific to you. Is that muktzah?
Well, now you're dealing with things beyond muktzah. Remember, muktzah talks about moving a kli.
Okay.
You bring up very good question. What was asked is like somebody has a prepaid card that could get you on the subway or a bus. So could you and they're stopping every station. For example, a Shabbos elevator. Okay, virtually every kosher hotel in Israel, has an elevator that stops on every floor. So The issue with that, the issue with traveling a distance, one issue is tchum, that you're not supposed to travel more than 2,000 amos. So that would be, that's a major issue regarding that. These questions are being asked about, like, for example, a Google car. You have these Waymos, if you pre-ordered on Shabbos, excuse me, Erev Shabbos, you ordered, 11 o'clock tomorrow because you have to go to the hospital, let's say, as a doctor, make rounds or something, These questions are being asked. I don't know, Rav Rimon was here Sunday night at Yavne and began to address some of these issues. But that's not muktzah. It's not completely muktzah. You might not touch anything when you walk into a train. So, but you have other issues. You have something called uvda d'chol, which I'm sure we're going to discuss that. Is it considered not a Shabbostic type of thing? Etc. So, I'm not giving you the answer because we're not in the right area.
The car itself
Is being described as muktzah as well, because it's valuable. Yes, and it's money.
Yeah.
It's like money. You have to view it as money. Now, to do something for a mitzvah, that means, what are the criteria? Let's say somebody is a chola, right? And you have to go to the hospital. So if it's a chola sheyesh bo sakana, you can drive yourself. But let's say it's ein bo sakana, using this kind of method might be a permitted, a better method. Right, we're not posketing it because we're not dealing with this issue, but that's where these issues are going to come in, where if there's rabbinic, there's a purpose. It's let's say the tzibur needs something, or it's l'shem mitzvah, or it's for a chola or something like that. Then we'll have then there are better ways of transport. Amir la'akum sometimes could be used, which means have a non-Jew come and pick you up in a permitted way, that kind of thing. Which
books of Machmas has to be more than you care about it. I mean, I care about that safer because I don't want anything bad to happen to it, and I would be very careful with it. But it's hard to believe that would be Mukzeh Machmas.
No, because remember they said a safer was never. They never included it in the original prohibition.
Well, that was Machmas Gufa, but I'm not saying.
But if you had in Canabula, if you had a book printed in a Chanami, that book would be Mukzeh.
But I'm saying that Machmas cannot be that the person cares about it and is very careful about its use, because there are a lot of things that most people are careful about. Most of the things they own, that they not be used improperly.
And they're not that expensive.
But expense can't be part of the criteria. We're talking about.
The bus card's not very.
Yeah, bus pass is $2. I mean, it's.
The Yalkut Yosef talked about totally bikbedosan shalabailim, and for some person it would be muktzah for him, and for another person it would not be muktzah for him because he's not makpid. Some of it is subjective. Yaakov is describing that some of this issue of muktzah is going to be subjective based on the individual person.
It has to be more than just that you care about it, that you don't want it to be used, you don't want it to be misused or abused, because that applies to almost everything you own. I mean, you don't want a suit. I mean, you don't want your suit, you wouldn't put your suit down in a place where it could get very dirty or it could be burned.
Right, but a malbush, we said, was not put into the category of muktzah.
Okay, but that's because it's machal skufa. But we're not talking about chasar and kiss. I'm saying that it can't be the criteria cannot be that subjectively you care about it. It has to be a little bit more than that.
And it has to be expensive. Or there has to be a loss if you lose it. I mean, an aerogram is not that expensive.
It's not expensive. Neither is a postcard. So there's a little fuzziness here as to what exactly this means.
I guess it's value to you, not expensive.
Right, but if it's value,
you're gonna put this away. An aerogram, you're gonna use it, so it's gonna be put like your passport. You're going to put it away. We don't keep our passports anywhere. We keep it in our drawer. You know, so we're building some criteria.
What's that about jewelry? I come home from shul, I mean. I'm
So
going to
jewelry
shul.
you can move for any purpose.
Jewelry, clothes.
It's like clothing. It's like a book and food. Okay. So another interesting example given by the Magen Avram as Mukzeh Kli is writing paper. He explains that one is careful to preserve writing paper. Now remember,
Oh,
the Magen Avram lived in 1680. So ain't a
It was expensive.
yeah, but today when that just because one of them said it, I cannot believe that today's poskim would agree with writing paper. Writing paper is thrown away today. Kosev Shilta Gibor and Perichas Diniyar Halak, right? Blank paper. Havi Mukzeh, and nearly Davi Mukzeh Machmas Kis. Given the Omen Leksivas copyright license, you could write on it. Now we also just don't. I mean, I keep my
right, we don't.
I keep my paper in my drawer. Okay, let's.
You know, when the printer prints out 5 blank pages, I put it back. Why waste it?
However, the Prima Godim writes that paper is only Mukzeh Machmas Kis if one is specifically particular not to use it for other purposes. By default, since one does not mind using paper to cover a container, it's not Mukzeh. If it was set aside for that purpose for writing, but people will use paper for other purposes. So you can clean yourself. He means going to the bathroom. Okay. Today's standard writing paper is much less expensive. Accordingly, the Shmir Shabbos Hilchos writes that only particularly expensive writing paper is Mukzeh Kli. Regular writing paper is merely a Kli Shemlacto Leheter. Think about it. The paper is like a pen. You can't write. Of course, you have to have a pen, but you have to have paper. So a pen is a Kli Shemlacto Leheter, but so is paper. So it's not just a neutral Kli. So we have to follow the rules for a Kli Shemlacto Leheter. Well, we learned the Kli. Let's say you're going to use it you're going to use it to clean something. You could use it. Let's say you need its place. You can do it. Okay, so it goes back to that. However, Rav Moshe Feinstein writes that writing paper is Mukzeh Kli even today. Let's see Rav Moshe's svara here. Shaper Mikri Oyser Aniyos Mukzeh Kli. Rav Moshe wants to say it was good that they said that writing paper, falls in this category. Kamo Shkosva Poiskin. He says Afilu Bizman Hazeh. Rav Moshe lived to the mid 1980s, so he didn't. He didn't live in the prehistoric times. He lived in modern times.
You can't use a piece of paper.
Intelligent people don't destroy paper that you can write on. So people are careful with their paper. Okay.
Yeah, but you know what? Intelligent people don't use plastic cups don't just destroy plastic plates for no reason either. Is this machmas? You say this is Mukzeh Machmas Kiss? I don't know. How far do you go with this?
Right. Well, no, because the Rishonim, the Shiltei Giborim. Remember, there were poskim. The Shiltei Giborim talked about writing paper.
Right, but if the reason is that
So the Prima Godim rejected it. Huh?
Listen, Moshe, I can't argue too much with Moshe, and I won't. But if the reason is we don't know of any intelligent person who destroys pieces of paper that we can write on, I don't know of any intelligent person who destroys this plate that can be used.
No, I know, but writing, it has a special chashivas. I think that's
That's not any mentioned by anyone here.
But the Shiltei Giborim
It
said
doesn't
it.
say anything about writing, it just says that.
New York Chalak Havi Mukzeh, New York Havi Mukzeh, the Kivan de Oimid Leksiva copied alayu. Magen Avram brought it.
But that's capitalized, it's.
Because it's Oimid Leksiva.
But that's incidental, that's on the receiver, it's just because you can use it for writing, it's not that the purpose of writing makes it.
That's the primary purpose of paper. You can use it for other purposes. But it seems Rav Moshe is bothered by the fact that the poskim wrote it, so he doesn't want to veer from that. And by the way, that's it. You see, Rav Moshe is the last word on the subject.
So you can't take a piece of paper from your printer and use it as a bookmark?
Well, when have you ever done that? Have we ever done? We have bookmarks that come with the book.
I use tissues.
Right.
All the time.
I use all.
No, what I use Okay, what I use, if it's a hardcover book, and you have the outside, I use the outside leaf to stick it in there.
But we're big on, hotel room keys.
With nothing and that, yeah.
What is the status of expensive electronic devices commonly used today, such as mobile phones and laptop computers? Are these Kli Shemlacto Leheter, which may be moved? L'tzorach gufa, l'tzorach makomo. I mean, you certainly could move this. I can understand l'tzorach makomo. I'm not sure exactly what we would do l'tzorach gufa with it.
Support a door, put it under there, prop something up.
Or are they considered Mukzeh Kli, and then you can't move them at all? So a number of poskim, including the Shmir Shabbos Hilchos, Rav Neuwirth, and the Pnei Halacha Rav Melamed, treat these items as Mukzeh Kli, since they are generally used only for their normal usage to prevent them from being damaged. That means you only use them occasionally because you don't want to damage them. You're not going to use them to prop up
Right, that's what I'm
a
saying.
door, is what he's saying. The Piskei Teshuvos acknowledges that, as discussed earlier, their status depends on how they are used by the owner. Consequently, one who would use them for other purposes, such as a bookmark or to keep papers from flying away,
It's good.
could likely treat it as a Kli Shemlacto Leheter. So that's where the hakpada of the subjective person, which is what the Yalkut Yosef wrote. Okay, so the Piskei Teshuvos, Zmanenu, kol sugei machshirim elektronim lemineim. He says in our day we have all these electronic devices, umechashvim, computers, v'telefonim lemineim, ushar machshirim digitalim adinim, very careful, delicate digital items. He says in the end it's going to be the subjective feeling of the owner. If even during a weekday he's going to use it, he's just going to play with it. Or in he'll put his iPhone or his computer on paper so they won't flow away. Gives it to his child to play with, and people give their phones to the children. Then it would be taken out of the category, which, as we see, is a very stringent category. Can't move it for any other purpose. We're getting a very nice understanding of Mukzeh now, right? From the beginning to where we are here, of where you have to, just because something is not a Mukzeh Machmas Chisor and Kiss, you then have to decide, well, what is it? Is it a Kli Shemlacto Leheter? Is it Kli Shemlacto Leheter? It's got to fall somewhere. Okay. The Achronim discuss whether a Kli Shemlacto Leheter can be a Mukzeh Machmas Chisor and Kiss if people are particular not to move it other than for its designated purpose. One can argue that since the owner is happy for it to be used at least for its designated purpose, and this purpose is permitted on Shabbos, the utensil should not be muktzah. I mean, I'm thinking of the fancy china that Yaakov said. The Shulchan Aruch Harav indeed rules that only a Kli Shemlacto Leheter can be muktzah machmas chisor and kiss. So to start with, it's got to be a Kli that you're doing something prohibited on Shabbos. You have very expensive kalim, even though they're not for merchandise. They're normally used for an iserdika purpose. He's very careful not to use it for other usages, because otherwise he's afraid it might go down in price. Also, he's defining a muktzeh machmas chisor and kiss, right? You can't move it even for its place. Or it's gufo. V'zeh nikra muktzeh machmas chisor and kiss. However, the Rambam, the Shulchan Aruch quoted above, do not specify that only a Kli Shemlacto Leheter is muktzeh machmas chisor and kiss, implying that there's no distinction. Accordingly, the Shmir Shabbos Hilchos assumes that even a Kli Shemlacto Leheter can be muktzeh machmas chisor and kiss, and includes examples such as a wall clock, a professional painting, a heavy closet, and a refrigerator. According to this, if a movable object fell behind a closet or refrigerator, one would not be allowed to move them to retrieve the object. So let's see. A person designates something to be placed in a specific place. They're very expensive. He's not going to move it. Doesn't want to break it. Could go on sha'on kir, a wall clock. Tumunam nonios, a Picasso. Shamak b'daleh. Dam zebechla mukzeh machbusor and kisu. Bein kol heter l'thal, can't move it. B'chein aron kaved, here, this china closet. Sha'adam nizar shelo tatla mimkomo. Who could move such a thing?
Yeah, it's not.
Shemi yiskalkel ekev atiltul. You're going to damage it. Mukzeh uvasor l'tatlo. Ach mutter liftoch et loz. You can open up its doors. B'chein adin l'gam mekarer. Same thing with a refrigerator. Halu mukzeh. Avol mutter liftoch loz. You can open up the refrigerator doors. The Piskei Tshuva clarifies that according to this opinion, heavy objects or appliances are not considered mukzeh machbus if they are not moved simply because they are heavy or there is no need. Right? Aronos, china closets, umekarer, refrigerators, ushar kelim chafetzim kvedim me'od. Things that are very heavy are furniture. In nizarim shol azizim imkom and machbas kshash lo yifstu v'kaklu. If we're careful not to move them because we don't want to damage them and reduce their value. So gamim bechlal mukzeh machbusor and kiss. Hagam shliiti metatem imkom tilnakus. Even though you sometimes will move them to clean underneath it, your housekeepers will move the sofa to vacuum underneath it. But if there's no worry that they're going to damage, it's just a weight issue. That's why. Then it's not machbas kisor and kiss. Okay, there's no reason to move them. So then ein b'hem isur mukzeh mutar l'tatlam b'Shabbos because you could move them. When are you going to move? Why would you? And we're not opening up a drawer. We see it's not a problem. It's like a refrigerator. We're talking about moving the old-fashioned, the refrigerators that would stand, not your built-ins. Can you move? Can you move a built-in? Yeah. Ravad uses the rules even more leniently that a Kli Shemlacto Leheter cannot be mukzeh machbus and kiss, and this rule is formalized by his son Rav Yitzchak Yosef. Kol din mukzeh machbus and kiss hurak b'kelim Shemlacto Leheter. Kelim Shemlacto Leheter, then if it's a kli that it's a permitted use, go in kelim yikarim, ha'omdim lenoi, you have beautiful vases and all of this fancy stuff that is just for beauty. Ulekisha abayit v'enam omdim l'schor, you're not selling them. Or the mitzvah and b'hem din mukzeh. U'moter l'tatel b'Shabbos ach machbus l'tzel kedin Kli Shemlacto Leheter. The Hilchos Shabbos argues that there is in fact no fundamental disputes between the poskim regarding this issue. All agree that even a fragile utensil that is treated with care, but which is generally used for a purpose permitted on Shabbos, such as a magnifying glass, is not mukzeh and may be used on Shabbos. All also agree that objects one would not plan to move at all on Shabbos, such as expensive merchandise or heavy closet, are mukzeh machbus kisor and kiss, despite not being designated for prohibited use. The Hilchos Shabbos was referring to earlier achronim, such as Shulchan Aruch Harab, when he says that even those who are lenient about Kli Shemlacto Leheter with respect to mukzeh machbus kisor and kiss would rule stringently in certain cases. However, it appears that Rav Ovadia Yosef, quoted above, does not agree to this, but rather understands that objects set aside as merchandise are only considered mukzeh machbus kisor and kiss because they are also kelim Shemlacto Leheter, as selling them on Shabbos is prohibited. It's unclear whether heavy objects, which one is usually careful not to move for any purpose, are mukzeh according to this view. Let's see the Hilchos Shabbos inside. Hinei yesh machronim shekosvu shein kli nasa mukzeh machbus kiss ela Shemlacto Leheter b'Shabbos. He quotes the achronim that said that in order to be designated as a mukzeh machbus kisor and kiss, it's got to start its life as a Kli Shemlacto Leheter only. It cannot be a Kli Shemlacto Leheter, according to those achronim. It can't always be like that. They're definitely going to be kelim, even though they're permitted use on Shabbos. They're going to be mukzeh machbus kisor and kiss. Kagon kelim ha'omdim l'schora, like merchandise. Sha'afim lachtom leheter, that's merchandise that normally can be used by heter. Kagon cars for kosos. Let's say you're selling plates and cups. It's merchandise. If this Kli is not prepared to be used on Shabbos, and the owner are careful about that, Kalim that are used for permitted purposes. We use plates and glasses and cups, and these things cannot become Mukzeh Machmas Chizron Kes. Kalim shebechanut, but Kalim in a store, Av Shemlacto Leheter, right? Even though those Kalim are used for permitted purposes, you're not going to use them on Shabbos. You want to sell these things. They're going to be damaged on Shabbos, potentially. The Bailim have put them completely out of his mind for use on Shabbos, even though Shemlacto Leheter. Okay, we're going to stop here. Yeah. And then we're going to get to Mukzeh Machmas Kufo. Any questions, comments, Aros? We have we should be getting I'll have to rush the shipment of volume 21. Any comments, Mario?
No,
Okay, very good. Have a good Shabbos and a good rest of the week.
thank you. Shkoyach.